Welcome back to another episode of Adeptus Paternus. This one's a little on the late side, but I think all the better for it. We're going to be going over Iconoclast Fiefdom, which is the Grotmas detachment for Chaos Knights. I have with me Telfer, the local Warpsmith, who has gotten in several games with this detachment.
Hello again.
How's it going, Telfer?
Oh, life is good. This is the detachment I have wanted for multiple editions. So this review is in no way unbiased.
Okay. Sounds good. I am before we start, I have to say one little quibble that I have with the name Iconoclast.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're really gonna, be going into the definition of what iconoclasm is, really the emperor is the iconoclast figure, and people who are rebelling against him less so.
So, you that's funny that you should mention the grammar of this up top block of information on the PDF. That's actually something that there's more to that. You're not wrong, and there's some, well, let's get into the detachment rule. It has to do with the detachment rule.
Sure, I know, and that's the other thing that kind of is a little off about all this. It's I think some people just like to use big fancy words without necessarily knowing exactly what they mean.
I mean, we all know Bill. He plays AdMech. That faction is word salad.
Yeah, very much so. For those who aren't in the know, iconoclasm literally means like the destruction of icons. So erecting idols and worshiping them is not that.
Yeah, we don't totally don't cover ourselves as like temples to chaos, and that yeah, we are not the icons incarnate as Chaos Knights. No,
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 no, no,
no.
no. But whatever. Chaos doesn't need to make sense. All right. Well, the detachment
Huh.
rule: dreaded masters. So the Chaos Knights have a 9-inch aura. They kind of do this in a particular order, but whatever. Uh, while a friendly damned unit is within 9 inches of this unit, the damned unit gets to reroll ones, and they have a second. Oh, sorry, that's just the Titanic Knights that get
Yeah,
that.
just the big guys get that, the
Just the big
reroll
guys
aura.
get that one, and then all knights get to eat stuff. Dark sacrifice. Each time a Chaos Knight unit with this ability is selected to shoot or fight, it can make a dark sacrifice. If it does select one damned unit within 6 inches, that damned unit must take a leadership test. If passed, destroy D3 models in that damn unit. If failed, destroy D3 plus 3. In either case, select one of the following abilities for your Chaos Knights units weapons to have until the end of the phase: lethal hits or sustained hits 1. And then, of course, to make this all work, you can include damned units in your army. See Codex Chaos Space Marines. And then it's basically a quarter of your army, roughly. So in a 2,000 point game, you can include 500 points, and no damned models can be your warlord. It does still have to be a knight.
Yep. Oh man, we get chumps.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good. A bunch of people are pissed that like now that they have to go buy a bunch of cultists to field this detachment.
I mean, you don't have to. You don't
Those
have
of us,
to.
of course you don't have to, but those of us who already own upwards of 200 cultist models, boy, I already had this one in the bag.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it looks. I think that obviously the Dread Tyrant's aura, getting your cultists reroll ones is not really the important part here.
Now, it does help more than you might think.
Sure.
Um, with a unit of 20 cultists, weight of numbers, all of a sudden, if you're rerolling ones on 40 attacks, it's
It'll add up.
cultists in CSM rely on grenades and lethal hits in order to get any work done. So a bunch of rerolls does kind of, the math isn't perfectly even, but it does help a lot with that. You can still use grenades.
Mm-hmm.
Your cultists still have the grenades keyword, which is hilarious. Um, And then with rerolling hit rolls of one and rolls of one, even if they're 40 attacks on fours and then usually fives, you're still going to push through a few wounds,
Yeah, yeah, it's not
which
nothing.
sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, and I
Still
mean,
kills Catan.
sure, yeah, absolutely. But I think the bigger thing is, aside, the bigger thing is getting the big buffs on your big knights.
For sure. Dark Sacrifice is pretty good. This attachment, I think, definitely focuses around a few Titanic Knights instead of a bunch of War Dogs,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of War Dogs are going to keep on eating through your cultists a lot. You notice the Dark Sacrifice says you lose models, not take wounds, so there's no
Yep.
feel no paining on Cursed Cultists. It's you chew through snacks very fast if you just want to munch on them. So it's not like Chaos Space Marines. You're not going to be dark sacrificing every single opportunity you get.
Right.
That being said, there are a couple instances in which you're going to be dark sacrificing all over the place because it is amazing.
Yeah. There are ways to bring some cultists back, though, right?
There is one. Um, there is a strat to bring some cultists back, but I think that's kind of it. All the other stuff on to bring cultists back are CSM dependent.
Ah, okay. Got it.
So are in the cultist detachment. Now the other thing that needs to get mentioned is the dark sacrifice does not say friendly damned unit.
Sure.
So rules as written, you can eat your opponent's cultists and get the buffs.
I mean,
I'm in the camp that that's probably an oversight.
yeah, probably
That
for game balance
yeah,
issues.
for game balance issues, there's never been a rule in 40k that allows you to destroy enemy models with no check, save, or test
And get a bonus out of it.
that and get a bonus out of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no. That
However, it's not something to gotcha your opponents with, but if you want to play it that way, I think it's hilarious. Especially, I'm devising a whole sub game that is two Chaos Knights playing Iconoclast Fiefdom against each other, trying to eat each other's cultists, and just playing hungry, hungry hippos, and whoever gets the most cultists wins. There's something to that.
Absolutely.
And what I mentioned earlier of the getting into the grammar of it, people have been trying to justify that the rule should be all damned units because in where is it? Oh, right here under Dreaded Masters, mortal thralls and foes alike are sacrificed to empower the fallen nobility.
Sure.
They're taking the mortal thralls and foes alike should be sacrificed, so that means friendly and enemy units should be able to be targeted. And I'm like, no, you
That's
should never
fluff.
take that's fluff. Never take the fluff or the italicized text to be canon. It never is,
Yeah.
but you know,
Well,
always check with your TO and your opponent to make sure that both of you are going to be having a good time playing the game.
absolutely. And I think it is also worth mentioning that simply being able to include 500 points of cultists is already very useful for an army of big models.
Oh, very much so. The addition to that lets Titanic units action and shoot in the
Mm-hmm.
same phase. Very useful and made it able for knights to score a whole bunch more points. There are a lot fewer dead secondaries
Yeah.
with that, but with a bunch of little mooks lying around, um, it's possible to do a lot more. And it's also just possible for knights to interact with the game in a lot more ways than well, I mean, I think you need a bunch of little cultists and a bunch of meat shields if you're not going to play a million war dogs. The reason why Chaos Knights has kind of devolved to the point of only playing War Dogs is because the big knights just get one shot by too much stuff in the game right now.
Yeah,
For a 400 something point investment is just too much for a unit that's going to get one rounded by a squad of infantry. So if you can body block with a unit of cultists, all of a sudden a knight becomes much more dangerous when it gets to engage on its terms rather than just kind of
absolutely.
having to take it on the chin.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I think that the number one biggest ranged killer of the Eradicator Fire Discipline brick, that's gone. Thank God, it's
Yes.
gone. So now the things that are able to actually, the small things that are able to one shot a knight are almost exclusively melee, and that means that having dudes who can just get in the way of the Exalted Eightbound makes a big difference. I mean, you can
Oh yeah.
yeah. So, and then of course there's the screening your backfield so that you don't get dudes coming in the back. All the other things,
Yes. Yes.
and move blocking them. You can have some get in the way, just on hold them further away. So it doesn't necessarily have to be right in front of you. It could be somewhere else, like if you're playing. Yeah, but
Yeah, knights are with this kind of a concept. Chaos Knights are no longer just a simple binary stat check.
yeah,
Uh, there becomes play and counterplay that isn't like, you have a lot of las cannons, I'm doomed to. There are other things I can do. I can threaten your las cannons of get melee with my cultists, and yeah, that's I've played 2 games with it so far. Both have been a ton of fun. Even if I severely owned in the first game, but oh, so many chosen
yeah,
triple maxed out chosen squads and 3 dark apostles. So
yeah,
a bunch of power fists with +1 to wound still don't feel good against knights, but I
sure,
mean
but
they're not cheap squads, so they should kind
yeah,
of murder everything they come into contact with.
yeah. Well, let's get into the enhancements.
Yes, let's.
So first we have Profane Altar, 20 points. Chaos Knights model only. Well, all of these I believe are Chaos Knights model only. Yep. Each
Yes,
time
they
the
are.
bearer makes a dark sacrifice, the maximum number of models that are destroyed. Oh, the maximum number is always destroyed. So 3 if it's passed, 6 if it's failed. But until the end of the phase, you get
Yep.
both lethal hits and sustained hits 1.
This is awesome. Both games I've played, I've brought a Knight Despoiler with double ranged weapons and the Profane Altar. Um, the double rapid fire battle cannons with lethals and sustains
Yeah.
is a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
That's the park it in a couple firing lanes, hit the e-brake, the parking brake, and lock down a bunch of lanes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a good into everything
just
gun at that point.
yes, because the problem with battle cannon is it's only strength 10, AP -1, so you're going to be saving a lot or shooting a lot of stuff, wounding on 5s, and they're going to be getting their full save because of cover. Unless you're making them take a handful of dice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's still
like
not the
I
best
played the
against
second
like
game.
2 up in cover, but whatever. You do what you can.
Still, yeah. I mean, no gun. The other option is the double Gatling cannon, which is that's what 30 no 42 shots no 32 shots, 2 18 count guns, but that's only strength 6, but it is AP 2 2 damage instead of
Mm-hmm.
AP 1 3 damage,
Yeah.
which I appreciate that there is like an actual trade-off. There isn't like, well, one is obviously better. um I just like the 3 damage one because
Sure.
Terminators and
Absolutely.
vehicles. My second game was against Custodes, and
Oh, that just eats them up.
sure, Custodes don't love or I mean, custodians are saving it all in twos, but like one round of shooting, I forced 19 saves on a squad of wardens, and sure you're saving on twos, but in 19 dice, you're gonna lose a few models.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Profane Altar is amazing. Um, it's super fun. Just give that knight a full bento box of 20 cultists. Uh, and let it just go to town. I brought the second game the cultist Firebrand
Mm-hmm.
attached to that because he bumps them up to a leadership 6 and then lets them retake leadership chests. So you'll just not run out of snacks by turn 3. You'll probably run out of snacks around turn 4 or 5.
Sure.
Um,
Well, I think the other thing worth pointing out is it seems like maybe a harsh penalty, but it really isn't if you math it out. So, like on average, you would have been losing 2 if you fail, if you pass, and now you're losing 3. So that's just one more. And then on average, you'd be losing 5 if you fail, and now you're losing 6. So it statistically is essentially one more dude on average to get both. It's not like you're losing double the amount.
Fantastic.
Yeah, totally
Right.
worth
I mean,
it.
it's like
Totally worth it.
you're not bringing the Profane Altar on like a Lancer and activating it in shooting for
Right.
like your 5 shock lance shots or something like that. No, I think the Profane Altar is really like you have a shooting castle, um, and they have to respect the potential damage that this ridiculous gun castle can deal.
Yeah.
Like game 1, even though I ended up losing, that night more than anything else controlled the flow of the game because it controlled where my opponent could move. There were certain places that if he left, he found out the bottom of 1, what happens if you leave 2 models exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
You lose 7 out of a 10-man chosen squad to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think the Profane Altar is great. Well worth 20 points.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Next is pave the way. At the start of the declare battle formation step, you can select up to 3 damned units from your army, and they have the scout's 6 ability.
It's good. If you can fit it in, you're taking this one because it just opens up opportunities for you to do so many shenanigans. Um, that being said, I don't think it's necessary
Mm-hmm.
that game 2 I didn't take it, and I didn't really feel its loss. Because like Scout 6 is a super good ability, but if you have a blob of 20 bases, it's not like you can scout 6 inches to hide that behind a building.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Scout on like a 5-man squad is super important to be able to either move forward to be able to tear and take an objective turn 1 or hide it because you don't. It's that flexibility. But let's face it, if you're playing Chaos Knights with Cultist, Scout 6 is like, well, boys, 6 inches towards the enemy.
Yeah. And the thing is, from my perspective, it feels like the next enhancement that we're about to talk about solves the issue that you might want to scout for in the first place. So we'll just talk about that one. Tyrant's Banner for 5 points. Instead of being, I'll just summarize it. Instead of being within 6 inches of a damned unit to munch on it, you just have to be within line of sight. And so now a Lancer can munch from across the board as long as he can see the unit. So that would be why I would potentially want to scout, just so that if that your melee knights would have something close enough at hand. But if you can just do this, you don't really need to worry about it. And this is only 5 points.
Yes. Tyrant's Banner I think is great. I think if it was much more than 5 points, it wouldn't be good.
No, sure.
But the fact that it is 5 points is one of those like, cool, just fill out a list with this, and it's a nice little cherry on the top of something. I brought it game 1. It never came up.
Sure.
Because my Rampager got murdered by Power Fists. um, Like the bottom of 2. He charged in, um, 8 most of the unit, and then the rest of the unit killed him back. So it didn't come up. I can see places of it being good, but there's also there are not really times at which knights can just see across the table. So
Yeah,
you're not like
yeah.
eating units that are in your deployment zone when you're in your opponent's
No,
deployment zone.
you do have to plan around it to a certain extent.
Yeah. Um, that being said, I also find myself dark sacrificing my melee knights less.
Sure.
Because usually
Yeah, they get
uh,
the job done anyway.
you have, yeah, you get the job done anyway of carnivores and rampagers and lancers. Their attacks are usually plenty for what I'm throwing them up against. It's the shooting stuff that is kind of the, all right, I'm going to split fire this knight in 3 different directions
Yeah,
and dark sacrifice it so that I get more bang for my buck and I can do more damage that way.
right. And it's not like you can put this. You can't double up, right? So you can't put this on the profane altar in order to maybe get more snacks to the profane
Right.
altar.
Yeah. But flexibility is good.
Yeah,
Knights are an army that definitely lacks flexibility, and so giving you some more tactical flexibility throughout the course of a game is good because
sure.
there's a lot of times that which you'll just end up getting played into a corner because your opponent knows what your game plan is.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of subtlety in big knights.
And I will
So
say there's something satisfying if you have a 1995 point list and you're just like, I can't leave points on the table. Just got to slap this on.
there is definitely that because you could be sitting there with 40 points remaining on a knight's list and you can't do a dang thing about it because you don't have any characters that don't have enhancements already. And
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, being able to fill out that last little bit of points, very nice.
Hmm. All right, then the last one, Diabolical Resilience for 35 points. Bear has a Feel No Pain 6 up ability, and you can ignore modifiers to the move characteristic and advance or charge rolls, because that comes up all the time.
Yeah, Nick, I want to get your opinion on how this one sounds before I talk about it.
So, 6 up, Feel No Pain on a big night is not a bad thing. I think it for that alone, you if you have the points and you're not maxed out on the other enhancements, sure, but it's kind of expensive for that in my opinion. The number of things that modify move characteristics and advance and charge rolls are very small absolutely and approaching 0 relatively. Night spinners are gone. That was the one thing that was sort of for a while that existed in the meta that would modify the move characteristic. Uh, I mean, the obelisk
I,
can do it, but
do
nobody runs the obelisk.
Earthshaker cannons
Earthshaker can, yeah.
affect
There's a couple.
vehicles?
Um, so that's just a. If this ever actually comes up, it's not once in a blue moon. I mean, this is like once in a convergence of the planets.
Right. I think diabolical resilience would be reasonable at 20 points
Yeah,
as something you'd actually like want to take.
yeah,
Right now, it's just like, well, Imperial Knights get that for free.
yeah,
The 6 up Feel No Pain. Um,
yeah.
so
You know,
I think they ran out of ideas for enhancements and they just looked at loyalists and they're like, cool, let's price it so it's not so to give the loyalists not so they don't complain about it.
yeah. I think that actually, if they had just made it 40 points and a 5 up, that would have been fine. It would have been a good one.
Oh, that would be so much better. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, and it's not like at 40 points that makes it. I mean, that would not be too cheap. I think that would actually be fair.
No, and it's also worth pointing out that the really big Forge World Knights, the ones that start having like 30 wounds and things like that that are
Yeah,
800 points are not characters. So you
exactly.
can't enhance them.
So you're only putting you would only be putting a 5 up on like 24 wounds potentially.
Hmm.
So I mean that is significant, but you're also like making the whole model 10% more expensive. So
And I've also, in desperation, popped the 6-up Feel No Pain so many times
and
playing the old Detachment, and it never works. It doesn't do what you want it to do. It doesn't save the knight. You might save 2 or 3 wounds, but
yeah,
chances are good knights are usually dead by 10 extra wounds.
yeah. So I actually do have a lot of experience with a 6-up Feel No Pain on a big vehicle because Necrons have the Spider, which has an aura of all
Hmm.
vehicles within 6 get a 6-up Feel No Pain. And it is most important for actually the Silent King because he has his Menhirs who can like tank shot. So if I can keep a Menhir alive on like 1 wound, that can make a huge difference, and so it's worth it there. And then on top of that, I reanimate, so I get to get the Feel No Pain.
Now,
Yeah, if you could,
if Diabolical Resilience was a 6-inch aura,
right?
we're talking about that. That's excellent,
Yeah,
but it's not.
or if it was like when you, now we're just theory, giving them ideas. What if what they had done is they for every model that was destroyed in the Dark Sacrifice, this model gains those wounds. Now that would be good if you could heal your
Yeah,
big
that would
knight,
be a fun one.
and that would
That
actually
would
be
be really
fair.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been a better one.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were really cranking out these
Oh
detachments,
yeah,
so
they're not gonna get everything.
I can't fault them for not having all the good ideas. They got
Yeah.
to save something for our codex.
Yeah. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you have 40 points left and you cannot come up with another idea and you have only taken 2 other enhancements, sure, why not?
If you're taking 3 big knights,
And if you're
3 big knights is a lot to fit in a list when you're already shoving
that's true.
a few hundred points of cultists in there.
I think that's the best
So
point. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like it's not bad. I think it's fine, but there are better options that you're gonna want to spend your points on that take precedence over Diabolic Resilience.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the strats. The first one, Avenge the Master's exclamation mark.
Yeah, they have that. This is one of the very few
Very,
strats with punctuation marks.
yep.
God, I wish the Deceptor strats all had a question mark at the end of all of them. Oh,
Yeah, that would be good. They should.
yeah. I'm gonna go into my codex that's
And
right over here,
just
and I'm
do
gonna
it.
write question marks in on all the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so this is any
Watch out,
phase.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia can't really. Well, you could probably convince Wikipedia to do it. Anyway,
I was gonna go send some emails now.
um, any phase, one Cat's Knights unit from your army that was just destroyed. Housekeeping, you can use the strat on that unit even though it was just destroyed. Until the end of the battle, the enemy unit that destroyed your unit is marked. Each time a damned model from your army makes an attack that targets a marked unit, that attack has the lethal hits ability.
I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the only way cultists get work done is by having lethal hits and by
Yeah.
dark pacting for it. So this just kind of gives it to them. If you're doing this, things have gone wrong for you.
Well, it does say any knights, not Titanic, so it could be a war dog.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But then you're also relying on your cultists to get work done when your cultist main game plan is to get fed to your knights.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. So I think that like I have an opinion about these kinds of strats in general. And my opinion in general is that they're only useful to kind of play mind games with your opponent to warn them, aha, you better be careful about which unit gives the final blow because I'll be able to then, essentially judge it and get a bonus. But that is also
yeah.
not particularly hard to play around if the person is particularly scared about it. And in this case, I don't think they should be. And on top
They
of it,
shouldn't be.
they shouldn't be. No, I mean, not really. If it was like +1 to hit and wound, then sure.
Oh God, if it was a judgment token, now we're
Yeah,
talking. That
yeah.
would be awesome.
But
Um,
but they're just cultists. What are they gonna do? And I think like
I
also how much CP you're gonna be spending depends on the quality of the following and strats. So
That's true. I don't think Avenge the Masters is a terrible one. Um, I think it's a fine strat. You're probably not going to be using it. You might use it in like a pinch situation, um, but I'm also in the camp of if there are stratagems that you're using every turn, they should just be abilities instead.
sure, yeah, this is
Um,
definitely not one you're using every turn. Like you literally
no,
don't need to do
I
that.
used it once and it didn't work.
Yeah, right.
Um, but it also, I was kind of one of those like, well, I'm going to be testing stuff, so yeah, those wardens this custodian wardens just murdered that carnivore. So pop avenge the masters and let's see if my cultist can get the job done. The cultist failed to get the job done. Well, now I'm going to charge it with a lancer. So
Yeah, exactly.
the lancer is going to get the job done, not the cultists.
Yeah. All right. Wretched masses, any phase, and now this is one damned unit excluding accursed cultists from your army that was just destroyed. Oh, and this is 2 CP, by the
This
way.
is 2
This is
CP.
2 CP. You can add a new unit to your army identical to the destroyed unit in strategic reserves at its starting strength with all its wounds remaining. And it does not. So you can only use it once per battle. That is how all of these strats work now,
Yep.
and you don't get to return characters.
Um, I think there are times that which yes, you are going to want to bring back a 20-man unit, 20-man blob of cultists.
Yeah.
Because you can run through your snacks shockingly fast.
Yep.
Um, and just having 20 more cultists that are going to come on later on in the game in your opponent's deployment zone is hilarious. Nobody expects this to come in from knights, and then people are used to playing in a very specific way, and then they will stick you their home field objective, walk away from it to go do work elsewhere, and then a blob of cultists comes on, hops on turn 3 on their home field objective, unstickies it, and then stickies it for you, and it's objectively hilarious as a
Yeah.
Chaos Knight player. Wretched masses can be that I don't have anything in reserve, so he doesn't have anything in reserve, so you don't need to worry about it. To oh wait a minute, now he does have something in reserve.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. So it isn't just for the I need to feed more jabronis to my
Oh,
big knight in order to fuel it.
absolutely.
There is some tactical acumen to be had from wretched masses that is fun. But I'm also glad it's 2 CP. Like,
Sure. Otherwise,
I mean,
you
it'd be
would
a lot
play
easier
it.
if it was 1 CP.
Yeah, you would do it every
But
game
that would
then.
be the every game. Exactly. So there is an actual cost to it. 1 CP for 20 more bodies is an absolute no-brainer, but having 2 CP lying around is not always going to happen, and so you actually have to plan for it, and you have to allocate resources properly to make sure that happens.
The thing,
So,
yeah, the thing that I find interesting about this one is that there was a fix to GSC that they made where you could not bring stuff back immediately.
mhm.
So this does not have that applied to it because it says any phase. It could be your
This
movement
any
phase.
phase.
So if something dies in Overwatch, you can be like, "Oh, that unit that just died is coming back immediately in strategic reserves
Yeah, it is.
and getting set up in the end of the same phase where it just died."
Gene Stealer cults don't have to pay command points to make their army ability happen, though.
No, they have other. They essentially have other points that they have to do that with, and
That's true that you do have more points to spend,
so
but it's a
this.
different resource.
No. I'm just saying that like there, if there's something that like you really, you know, need to make happen, or like let's say it's in your movement phase, you notice that like your opponents obviously turn 3 on because it has to be the strategic reserve, so it's subject still to the same
Hmm.
restrictions. Um, you just move up, they overwatch, and all of a sudden you have a unit in reserves that you can still use in their backfield if you want. There's some
Oh, sure.
shenanigans
I
that you
mean,
can do
look,
with it.
if you're playing knights and your opponent is overwatching your cultists, life is good.
Well, they might just have a bunch of flamers, and what else are they going to overwatch?
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's like, boys, charge Land Raider Redeemer.
I mean, the other thing is if you really need to get something done and you have 3 CP, you can, let's see. If for some reason one of them dies in your opponent's command phase, could that happen? Probably. There's some way that could probably happen. You could bring them back
So
immediately, and then they could
yeah,
rapid ingress.
yeah, that something would have had to have gone really wrong for that to happen. But yeah, it's true. There is more flexibility to Wretched Masses than some of the other bring stuff back.
Yeah,
Um,
any phase
but
is pretty powerful.
anyways, but it's also keyworded to damned. So I think that's the limitations.
And
So
not accursed cultists, the ones that you would really like to
right,
bring back.
I think a cursed cultists are a trap
Sure,
in
fair enough.
Iconoclast Fiefdom. You're paying extra points for stuff that if you can't dark pact them for sustains on the power fist equivalents, and ACDC went up in points and down in power and without dark packs. I don't think it is the same danger that it is,
Yeah,
because the other thing is you have access to carnivores, which do
right.
that, but way better.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're
I
feeding bodies, not wounds, and so you're going through them faster.
yeah. That being said, I haven't tried a Curse Cultist yet because I've just been having fun bringing 70 cultists with
Yeah,
my knights. Just the wave of unwashed masses with their gigantic robotic overlords is a lot of fun. I'll try a Curse Cultist and see what they do. If I'm able to get value out of them,
sure.
great. And if I do bring Curse Cultist, then all of a sudden I have more CP for other stuff.
Yep. All right, next one, Soul Hunger. Fight phase after a Chaos Knights unit from your army has fought. The target is that Chaos Knights unit. If one or more models were destroyed as a result of those attacks, your unit regains up to D3 lost wounds. If one or more from a battle shocked unit were destroyed, you get D3 plus 2. Wow, synergy with battle shock. I wonder how you can make that work.
Well, so you don't have your old detachment ability, so they're not battle shocking if they're below starting strength.
Yeah.
I mean, they did buff your army ability, so you get
Yeah.
if they're battle shocked, you get big bonuses against them. But that being said, it's going to be relatively rarely that you're actually fighting battle shocked enemies. So
Yeah. I
I'm
think one.
glad they put
Yeah.
some battle shock contingent stratagem on there because that just makes it feel like you're playing knights
Yeah.
or chaos knights. Um,
And it's
I
not.
think I have yet to actually pop Soul Hunter.
Yeah, that seems.
In the two games I've played it,
It seems way, way, way too little. D3 wounds for 1 CP. You just roll a 1, and it's like, okay, I paid a CP for 1 wound.
yeah, that's not great. I mean, I could see. I think yeah, making sure it's against battle shocked. You're going to want to pop it against battle shocked stuff.
Yeah,
3 to 5, that's more reasonable.
sure.
Um, but it's also never came up because the two games I've played was against Custodes, who are never going to battle shock, and then uh, triple um, what are they? Dark Apostles who can just
Sure.
unbattle shock stuff.
Yep.
So the things that did battle shock immediately unbattle shock themselves. So battle shock did not come into play in my two games, but as also my opponent had tech against it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
so
mean,
Hunger, it's no Terror Shades. Terror Shades is an absolute crutch that
right.
our index holds itself up on. I pop that as many times as possible whenever I'm playing the index detachment because it's amazing. Is we'll see if I actually end up using it.
Yeah,
It might be handy.
it would be super niche though. Like this is a Hail Mary strat.
Yeah, that's true. It's another one. Things have gone poorly, and you are attempting to stabilize.
I would say like the one time when I could see it is if like you are just below half strength and you would like to not have to take a battle shock test. Like let's say that it's your opponent's because just say fight phase, not your fight. So either. So like let's say your opponent hits you, gets you below half, you hit back, clear them off, and now it's about to be your turn, and you are one wound starting below half, and you're like, well, I could either pay a CP for to auto pass my battle shock, or I could pay a CP and get the wound back. I may as well just get the wound back.
Or getting yourself to outside of being bracketed.
Outside of being bracketed, if you're like one below, but I would really only do it if I was like either super desperate or just one below, so it's guaranteed.
Yeah, yeah. I think I wouldn't. Yeah, wouldn't like a 50-50 to make a CP do something. Ugh, that doesn't feel good.
No. Yeah. All right. Next one, unrestrained rage. Your movement phase. Basically, after you advance or fall back, you can shoot and charge. I mean, that's really good. Advance, fall
Oh,
back,
baby,
shoot and charge.
this is why you're taking this detachment.
Yeah.
Is like beyond the I'm having fun feeding cultists to my knights. Uh, Unrestrained rage is so good.
Yeah.
That is, in my opinion, it is worth losing rotate ion shields or demonic bulwark or whatever it's called
Sure.
for the better invuln. I think it is worth it. I'm sure that value statement is up for debate, and there's a lot of math that can make that happen. But a rampager or a lancer that can fall back over enemy models and then charge farther is a terrifying tactical thought to behold.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That.
Because they both move like 12 and 14, so you can clear most squads and then still get to your opponent's deployment zone on like the top of turn 2 if you're going full send this way.
And there's an important point also. So because big knights can go over walls or through walls now, and after they finish the move, they test for being battle shocked. This happens before that, and so you can run this. You can pop this strat. They make the move, and even if you
it is just after a Chaos Knight unit from your army advances or falls back. So they did think of that.
They did think of that. However, then I would say that they're simultaneous, and therefore you, as if it's your turn, you can choose which one resolves in what order.
That's true.
Yeah.
I would need to go reread everything about that to make sure that there isn't some...
I'm pretty sure that these will be happening simultaneous because it says after the move, and this is just after.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they did continue if they consider just after and after. We'll see, but
yeah,
it's
there
still
might
pretty.
be an FAQ that comes out on it.
Yeah, it's still a pretty low chance though that you're it's a 1 out of 6 that you.
Yeah, but exactly.
I think that you could still plan around being able to do this.
Oh, for sure. If you're playing knights, you are already in the bucket of, look, I'm going to roll a 1 at some point in this tournament, and one single dice roll will end my whole career. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
That's just playing knights to begin with, so you're already okay with making those rolls. Unrestrained Rage is fantastic. It's something that knights have wanted for this entire edition, and it's marvelous.
I mean, any army wants advance, fallback, shoot, and charge. It's the full package. So yeah, and putting it on a big chassis is amazing.
The problem is also one of the problems is you're only able to do it once a turn.
Yeah.
Um, but there's so many applications for it. Like with the double battle cannon despoiler, battle cannons have blast.
Right.
So if they get touched, then they can't shoot all of a sudden unless they just take an inch step back, unrestrained rage, so they can shoot again, and then whatever was touching them is just a giant smoking crater in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unrestrained rage lets a lancer get lance repeatedly.
Yeah.
Um, so there's so many applications to it that are fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I can actually buy the argument that this is a reason to take it over the index. All right, next one. Worthless chattel. Shooting phase, one damned unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, enemy units are not considered to be within engagement range of your units for purposes of selecting targets of ranged weapons. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy model loses a wound, while that model's unit is within engagement range of your unit, roll 1d6 on a 4-up. One model from your unit is destroyed after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks. I'm actually kind of surprised that in the grim dark future, this sort of ability doesn't just exist already. That people aren't just willing to blow stuff up in friendly fire. But
Yeah, I think like I'm in the idea of like orcs should be able to run over their own infantry with vehicles,
yeah,
and that's just how orcs work. But for rules purposes, I can see why it's
sure.
not like that. Um, I can't think of any time that you're going to use worthless chattel. Um, this
Uh,
okay, I can think of if your idiots are in
no, yeah.
melee with a unit that prevents them from falling back,
Um,
then
yeah.
that could be a reason. But I mean, here's the thing:
Oh well,
you
yeah. You got
if you're
some
shooting at
exalted
them
eight
with a
bound
warp,
coming at you. Like,
you're gonna lose the whole unit anyway because they're gonna take. Uh, it just destroys the models in the unit, so you're gonna fall back. Or if they're battle shocked, you're gonna fall back anyway because they're cultists. You don't care if they live or die.
yeah.
Um,
I could
so I
really only see it with like if you wanted to move block exalted eight bound who have the pass a leadership check or else you can't fall back and you're like no I gotta kill those exalted eight bound or they're gonna come mulch me so I'm gonna pay the CP and I don't care if I but I'm also trying to imagine a world in which exalted eight bound charged cultists and didn't kill them maybe if they consolidated into them.
maybe. Um, the only real thing I can come up with is if you don't want your cultists to pop a reactive move.
Sure.
Um, if there's like, because a bunch of them say like if an enemy finishes a movement within 9 inches, you can make a 6 inch move. And so if your cultists fall back from a very valuable unit and then they just make a reactive move, high bind a wall, and now you can't get to them anymore.
Yeah.
Worthless chattel allows you to just shoot that infantry and not you'll kill your own cultist for sure, but you'll still get that infantry unit rather than letting them run behind a wall to just charge out again next turn. That's kind of the only way I can come up with a use for this.
Or if you're on a point and falling back would take you off the point and you really don't want to fall back off the point.
But you're gonna lose the cultists anyway.
Maybe. I mean, like, what if it's like, there's like two dudes
What if
on
you're
there?
shooting it with like a turbo laser destructor?
I mean, like
Yeah,
it
I mean,
could, yeah,
it says they're not considered to be within engagement range, so you would ignore the big guns never tire penalty. You'd ignore the -1 penalty to shooting like an enemy knight that is touching
yeah,
cultists or something
okay.
like
So
that.
you wouldn't be -1 to hit. That might be worth it.
Um,
Yeah, it's
so
it's super
there's a
it's
bunch of
super
niche
niche.
cases.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
it
not like the
it's also
worst
just
thing, but yeah,
it's also just really good fun, and it feels very canon, and It's very fluffy, so I'm okay with having that. I'd
Yeah,
rather them give me a fun, fluffy stratagem than one that I'm just never going to use because it's stupid.
sure. Fair enough.
So,
I mean, this is almost both of those things simultaneously.
hey, it's chaos. We got to get at least one in.
Yep. It's not Kareen, like the orc one where it's like if a
Yeah.
vehicle explodes, it can move 6 inches and then explode. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like it's funny, but
I,
boy, howdy is
if
that.
it's a battle wagon, and if you're playing Deceptors who's going to auto detonate your battle wagon, you can
Yeah,
get that Mork thinking going.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you can
yeah,
get out closer if you got dudes inside. All right, last one. Preserve the idols. Your opponent's movement phase after they make a normal advance or fallback move. One Chaos Knights unit that is within 9 inches of that unit. Select one damned unit that is not battle shocked, not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, and is within 6 inches of your unit. God, this is complicated.
right.
That damned unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches, but it must end this move closer to that enemy unit when it started the move.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the possibly the worst reactive move strat in the entire game.
That is so restricted. It's so restricted.
It's
I mean,
bad. It's bad. I have tried to use it and it doesn't do what you want it to.
it's still a normal move. It's not even like it's a blood surge move so you can get an engagement range or something.
Yeah. Um, if it was into engagement range, great. That would be useful. You could, yeah, get them into range to
Yeah.
stop them from shooting, and stop them from getting a charge bonus. Now, the biggest problem with this is like the idea of getting some extra movement out of cultists to screen out something to stop it from charging one of your knights is a great idea. But knight bases are so big that there's no way a unit of cultists are using 6 inches to actually screen out a knight base
And you should have been doing it
that they weren't
already.
already doing. Yeah, exactly. If
Yeah.
they were already doing it, great. I guess you can swap where your cultist champion is. Uh, and then the other problem is like the Space Marines that you're trying to stop from getting into melee are just going to shoot the cultists with bolt pistols and kill half of them.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're actually the number of things in this game without some ranged attack is really low. Um,
Sure.
and any attack will deal with cultists. Um,
So here's the one: if you really screwed up, or like maybe some exalted eight bound are coming behind you and you weren't seeing it coming because they don't have pistols. So or like only one of them does. I forget. So
mhm.
you could potentially
I
there.
think one is a plasma pistol.
Yeah. Um. I guess if the circumstances arise where instead of screening you can take a point, like you can get onto
But
an
you have to
objective.
finish your move closer.
So here's where the rules lawyering is ridiculous. You can have one model move closer and have everybody else go the
Yeah.
opposite direction.
And I guess that the one guy who gets closer is the guy who eats the plasma pistol shot.
Exactly. I mean, so like you could use this potentially, like if for whatever reason you weren't on a point and you really wanted to get on a point and you're 5 inches away from it, you could do it that.
Yeah.
But it's a really convoluted way to do it.
Yeah, it's I can see why they made it so restrictive because if they gave knights a reactive move, holy moly, that would be a problem.
They could have given the
Um,
dogs a reactive move. I mean, they gave Necron vehicles a reactive
maybe.
move.
Well, look, that's a problem in and of itself. So, um,
I don't think that they were thinking
I
about this in terms of balance. I think they were thinking about this in terms of cinematics. That yes,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's cinematic as hell. I tried to get this to work in a game against Custodes, and it did successfully prevent one model from getting into melee, like one base out of five,
Yeah.
or four from getting into contact with my knight. And this was like the knight was up against the edge of the table, and so I was able to like wedge the cultists to stop that. And even still, they just shot the cultists with their guardian spears and killed all but like two of them.
Yeah.
So
They should have made it that they could get an engagement. That would have, if they had done that, this would actually be a useful and still not overpowered strat. But
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
maybe. I like with everything else that this detachment has, it's fine. I mean, there are other Grotmas detachments that have like 3 or 4 bum stratagems. Um,
There's some that have a lot though.
so
And not just not just the Necron Star Shadow one. There's a few. I think this is. I mean, it's kind of okay from a competitive play perspective, simply because you have one banger. One that's like the advanced fallback shooting
yeah,
charge is like great. That's gonna be the go-to. Uh, maybe wretched masses once in a game, and then the others are just sort of like if it comes up, and that's okay.
well, the other thing you get is you also get grenades
Aha, yeah,
because there's nothing in
exactly.
your army that had access to grenades, and now cultists, the crappiest unit in the game, has access to grenades, and that is hilarious when all of a sudden 2 cultists pass a leadership check and frag a custodian warden,
Yep,
like the one that's left on a point. That's hilarious.
yep.
Um, that is, there's a couple of these base stratagems that just having access to the little damned mooks lets you do that knights really weren't able to do any of that before. And I think from a competitive standpoint, there's a lot of it's easy to look at a lot of this detachment and say like, wow, that's awful. But there's a lot that you can simply do that you had no capability of doing before.
Mm-hmm.
That I think the skill ceiling is pretty high on this one.
Sure.
Because the idea of knights of like you have these fantastically powerful data sheets and weapons, but you have to make sure that you're using them really, really efficiently. And now with 500 points of cultist, like, well, actually, that there's a fair amount of wiggle room in how efficiently do I need to get the bang for my buck.
Yeah.
Will one bad movement phase, one small mistake cost me the game? Well, maybe, but um, there's ways to play them differently now that is a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see how Knights players who are better than me are able to pick this up. And if I don't think it's necessarily going to take off more than 13 dogs.
Sure.
Um, for less of a reason than um, anything to do with knights. It's just there's so much stuff in the game that counters a big knight um, in an almost trivial way
Yeah, but the same can be
that
said for the little knights too.
is true. That's why you just need a lot of them. That's why you need as many as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think that having a bunch of chaff is in and of itself right now very useful, because I don't know that very many people are necessarily teched for dealing with it particularly well. I think that you were saying about like a bad movement phase. A bad movement phase becomes a lot easier to avoid with advanced fallback shoot and charge.
That yeah, as for sure, having more tools in your toolbox to make sure you can enact your game plan is fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
I I don't know about, for me the number one thing isn't even the dogs moving through walls, although that is a big one to swallow for Chaos Knights players. I think just the losing the demonic equivalent of rotate ion shields when you have
Yeah.
if you're running big knights, like they're the best targets for that. And saving on fives is rough.
Saving on fives is real rough. Like, I mean, it's better than melee when you're not usually not getting any saves.
That's true.
Um,
So I mean, but I suppose a lancer, is a pretty good option for this detachment.
that's kind of why the Lancer is an auto include in Chaos Knight list right now, is because it's the only thing that gets saves in melee. And yeah, you don't if you don't have rotate, then having that permanent 4-up is great.
Absolutely.
Um, so I tried one game of the Rampager, one game of the Lancer. The Lancer lived in game 2, and the Rampager just got eaten in game 1. Um, so
And I think that the Rampagers giving out assault, or sorry, no, other way around. The Lancers giving out assault is a nice thing in general for your brigands anyway.
yeah, it's I don't want to say it's less important than you might think, but you have to play so cagey with knights that a lot of
Sure.
time there is like the full send turn to which you have to pop out of walls and come around corners and just open up and hope you can do enough damage that the clapback doesn't kill your big knights. But um, it's important for that turn. But with 12 inches of movement or 14 inches of movement, that extra d6 can be handy, just um, not as game changing as it is for a unit that has like 6 inches of movement.
Yeah, and brigands are also one of the very few things that can be in melter range out of reserves. So,
Yeah, brigands are real good. Um, that's still, I mean, the list I've been playing is a despoiler, a despoiler, a lancer, two brigands. Was it 3 or 4 carnivores? Might have been. Let me actually, I gotta look that up. But 2 brigands, a couple of carnivores, and then just 70 cultists and the cultist firebrand.
mm-hmm.
And that has been playing okay. Yeah, 3 carnivores. Um, it's enough cultists that I have some that can sit back and sticky objective and be kind of. It's hard to say cultist as a skirmisher unit, but if you save a command point for grenades, they become a skirmisher unit. Um, to have them to be able to pop out body block at a later date when that starts becoming more and more important. Um, like the idea of a knight getting charged, not dying, falling back, then you popping unrestrained rage to be able to shoot it still, and then a bunch of cultists running in to also then get in the way of that.
mm-hmm.
Like a big knight with 24 wounds can eat 12 wounds and still be fine. So there is always that metric of what are you getting into melee with? Will it take a big chunk out of you and not kill you and not be at 13 wounds? A knight is just as good as a knight at 24. So using that pool of wounds it's a very important thing to when can you spend them effectively of I never want to be within range of getting shot by las cannons because they are scary. To, well, my opponent only has 3 las cannons in their army,
Mm-hmm.
and I could be within range of all of those. Things would have to go really badly for me for 3 las cannon shots. It couldn't even kill me. It could really hurt, but chances are good I'll eat some damage, but not just get floored by it. Um, and so using that big stat check, how do you use your giant stat check army to bully other lists is real important. And having extra tools like cultists can really buffer that because you have both ends of the spectrum
Yeah.
of worst of the worst, best of the best. Um, it vastly changes the equation on how to spend your resources wisely. Um, And it's also just a ton of fun to play because if there isn't like speed metal going through your head every movement phase, then you're playing it wrong.
Yeah. I definitely am so glad to see an alternative to just more dogs. I mean, I don't
And they
know.
made dogs cheaper.
Yeah. I don't know if this is better. I don't actually think it is better than War Dog spam, but I don't think it's significantly worse. I think it's only maybe a step back, and I think that actually, if you're trying to go far in singles play, this might actually potentially be, depending on your local meta, a better choice. If so yesterday I was at an RTT playing in the third round against Dan, who has been lately been playing Chaos Knights and teammate of mine, and he just bodied his first two opponents who had no answer to Knights, and then I
Hmm.
dunked on him because I did have an answer. I
What? You've still running 3 jets or just two now?
two, but also a Tesseract Vault who has the hilarious. I think I was talking about it in Discord. The anti-character 4-up 6 dev wound gun, which is
Yeah, that hurts.
it's funny because like it's intended for it's precision. It's intended for sniping out like a foot character, but it's also very useful into a big knight. Just be like, yeah, take 6 wounds. Um,
Yeah. Is the Tesseract Vault T13?
no, it's T12. It's the obelisk
Okay.
that's
Even
T13.
still, carnivores are wounding that on a 4-up with their slaughter claws,
Yeah, like I'm letting
and
them
that is
get near.
shockingly bad. Oh, well, I mean, a lot of times you don't have a choice when they're 14-inch move through walls.
No, you do.
Um,
You put it at a distance where they can't get all the way through the wall.
well, it's true, but
Yeah.
um,
No, but the point is that like I if I have no trouble chewing through hulls. But if you have a whole bunch of cultists, then that becomes a slightly different story.
yes, it becomes a less of all your eggs are in one toughness 12 basket. Um,
Or T10 with
it
the
makes it
dogs.
or T10 basket with the dogs. It does become less of a skew list, which is good. I mean, I think Iconoclast Fiefdom is way more, not from a competitive sense. I think it probably is less competitive than War Dog Spam. Um, there are different ways to play it, and time will tell if there are players who have more acumen with Iconoclast um, than Dreadhost. But Iconoclast Fiefdom is way better to play in a casual game
Oh
day
yeah.
setting.
Yeah.
Um,
It's way funnier.
and it's way funnier. It gives your opponent that even if they don't have nothing but anti-tank, something to murder, and just picking up handfuls of cultists every single turn um, is just the mental game against knights of the I don't have really anything that can kill them, and my opponent only has 3 models left on the table, but they
Yeah.
are enormous, and by weight alone, it outweighs my army 2 to 1. Um, can suck, and it can really suck just starting a game knowing that like I don't really have much that can deal with the enemy army at all. Whereas Iconoclast Fiefdom is you want to bring bigger knights, so there's less of them on the table, so you don't have full table coverage anymore, and there's a bunch of cultists for you to murder all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think it's healthier for your just game day fun.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I really just from a if I'm trying to have fun, I would much rather play this than War Dog Spam.
yeah.
100%. I mean, I'd rather play this. I'd rather play against this. It seems more fun for sure. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah, it is. the the way Knights are competitively playing right now does not feel like that was the way the Index was designed.
I don't
Um,
know what the index was designed for.
oh, it may have been the push it out the door so we can release the game
Yeah,
and release this edition.
yeah. I mean, there's plenty of discussion on that, and I don't think we need to go too deep into it. It's all going to
No,
change with the codex soon,
the
anyway.
talk on how to rebalance Knights is big Knights and all the different speculation and rumor mongering about that is, I mean, none of that's important. What matters is when they actually release an update, and then we'll see what happens and if it'll be fun or not. And then the
Yeah,
FAQ for that will come out, and it'll probably be fine.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but the current meta for Chaos Knights does feel very min-maxy.
Mm-hmm.
Of you know that your opponent is trying their hardest when they show up with nothing but war dogs.
Sure.
Um, And then the opposite of that can be true if your opponent shows up with like three big knights and God forbid an abominant. Then you know your opponent's not trying and they're just bringing a fluffy army. And if you lose to that, which you can because it's still a giant stat check army, that just feels bad.
Sure.
Um, so in some ways that like there's some ways to play knights that just aren't good for anybody. Um, Whereas this gives a different way for them to play that feels much more like a regular army.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's great.
I think they did a good job with it, and I think certainly it can be balanced to be. You could, I think you can more easily balance this in the meta than you can balance the index in the meta. Slightly
Yeah, I'd
complicated,
agree with that.
slightly complicated by the fact that you're dealing with two books because of the cultists. So like you have to deal with the points on the cultists, but cultists are always going to be relatively cheap. I mean the regular ones. So I think it'll be
The
fine.
only damned things that ever have seen an update since the release of the edition has been ACDC.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And the book is already out for
our
CSM, so
yeah, the book's already out, and the ways that made ACDC powerful, you don't have access to any of those tools here. You don't have
sure.
access to your army ability, to the CSM army ability. You only have data sheets. So, yeah, ACDC isn't able to threaten like 34 inches in this
Right.
detachment.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
I think it'll be fine. If they choose, I'm very curious. That we still don't know as of time of recording if they like what kind of balance is going to happen with the Grotmas detachments. They have said that they do plan to do some kind of balancing. We'll see. I think, but like I said, I do think this is something that that it is. They have hooks to hang things on with this that can make it work.
right. There are levers to pull in Iconoclast Fiefdom that can fix some of the. Fixing it is hard because it's not like, oh, well, this is unplayable. It's like this is fine. It can be tuned to move slightly to keep the fluff and the feel and just make it more usable
Yeah.
and more and less dud strategies.
Yeah. We already discussed a
Um,
few of those ways, so I'm sure they're thinking about it
exactly.
if they are choosing to think about it. Yeah.
hmm
Well,
I mean, but if you're playing knights, then you're also used to already having a lot of things that are kind of duds already.
sure.
Um, so you have to be okay with just accepting that there are some things that your army doesn't get to do, some things that are always going to be suboptimal, um, and that's just uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
knights suffer a lot more of the pain of random dice rolls, and so you have to be more accepting and open to a lot more stuff as a knights player than they're definitely a lot swingier
Mm-hmm.
than the good armies.
Well, not Chaos Knights have been in almost the exact same place in the meta for the past
Dude,
almost three editions. So it's finally kind of cool though to see a
well,
different way to play.
we can't not. There was definitely the start of the edition when Titanic needed to get ironed
Okay,
out, and there was a lot of
let's
problems with
yeah.
that. We
Barring
can we can
that,
we can just excise that and throw that away because that was just bad.
yeah.
Um,
Barring
and
that,
Chaos Knights
yeah.
also just got fucking dumpstered then. Um, but the yeah,
They
barring
feel
that,
like
I
they're
think
in
they've
the
stayed
same
at like
place now that they were when you and I played a game 2.5, 3 years ago, long time ago, and you were talking about how
pretty much.
they've been a 50% win army for all edition, and now barring that episode, they're basically a 50% win army now. So
Yeah, they're like 50. They've been like 49 to 51% for almost the entire edition for like the last two editions.
yep,
Except the end of ninth, but that was different times
yeah,
when nobody was a high win percentage army except the
yeah.
but yeah,
Well, thank you for
it's good
going over
times.
with. Yeah, no, I
No
do want to play a game
problem.
against you doing this, and thank you for coming on to discuss it. And yeah, we got for those of you if you're still listening, Telfer has a really fun lore-based idea that we're going to be filming in the future, hopefully sooner than later. So keep an eye out for that.
I have found so many deep dark corners of wikis and forums that really kind of getting into the well, what's your actual source for that? Um, oh, you can't actually provide a source for that piece of lore. All right, delete that paragraph of my document.
Yeah, that
I'm
Luton oh
I'm digging
09.
down for some. Oh yeah, I'm feeling some of his woes that, and this isn't even my day job. Man, that being his day job has got to be rough. Um, but I'm having a lot of fun digging up some deep lore for Nick and Clint to be uh, talking over later.
Yeah, I'm
So
looking
that is
forward
in the
to it
works.
too. So keep tuned. All right, well, thanks again, and have a good night.
Till next time.